Alright, welcome to the first part of the Roblox Studio Programming course. The first thing that you will want to make sure that you do is get your account set up. Instructions for that can be found in the PDF portion. If you have any questions about that at all, make sure to email us. The email is online at youthtechinc.com if you have any issues getting your account set up. Once you are inside of the Roblox Studio program though, we're going to go ahead and open up the base plate here in the top left-hand corner. This first tutorial is going to kind of go over the basics of the game and kind of allow you to sort of dive in from the beginning. So the first thing that I'm going to do is kind of go over some of the different options you have within the studio. So if you look over here on the right hand side, you have all these different tabs. This is called your Explore tab. Your workplace is going to contain anything in the game that are parts, scripts, events, etc. Your Players tab is going to include anything that is an avatar in the game, so if you have multiple players, that's where they'll show up. Your lighting is going to be the dynamic game lighting. These next couple in the Explore tab are going to be your databases. You're then going to go down to your guided interface. You're going to have some tools options down here, a chat feature if you choose to have a chat feature in your game. This will let you kind of change the settings around in it. And last but not least, you have your sound services as well, so anything that you have to do with the sound in the game. If you look up here towards the top, you have your different main tools that you'll use to design your world. Your select button is going to be used to select anything in the game, so once we start putting down bricks and different things like that. Your move tool will be how to let you move these pieces around within our base plate. The scale button does what the scale button says it'll do, so that'll scale any part to make it bigger or smaller. And lastly, you have your rotate button. So this is how you'll rotate a part to kind of change the direction of it. Over here, you have your parts tool. Pretty much everything in this game is created from these four basic blocks. So you have a block, a sphere, a wedge, and a cylinder. With all those parts and a mixture of the scale and rotate tools, you can create just about any shape in the game. Your materials tab is going to be how you choose the material for a given block. So say you want to turn a part into a window, you're just going to create that window out of a block, and then you'll change the material down to glass. And lastly, you have your color tab, so this is how you can change the color of those blocks that you put down in the game. Over here you have the play tab, this is how you test out your world, and then you have the stop tab that'll appear after you are already in the game testing it. So the first thing that we are going to do is go ahead and place down a block so you can go through some of these features with me. So I'll click on the drop down arrow here and choose block. Now it'll place it down over here. To move over here, I'm going to use the W, A, S, and D keys. W moving me forward, S moving me backwards, A moving me left, and D moving me to the right. In order to look around on the screen, I'm going to hold down the right button on the mouse pad and drag my mouse around. That's how I'll move. So say I want to kind of fly around and look at the same time, it's going to be a combination of the WASD keys and a right click on the mouse. So now that we have our block here, I'll click on it to highlight it. Up here in the top left, I have the move button, which is going to allow me to move the block around. You can either do that by clicking and dragging it, or clicking and dragging the arrows that are located on the different axes on it. The scale button is going to allow me to make it larger, smaller in any direction. I can do this by grabbing the different balloons that pop up on the screen. And lastly, the rotate tool is going to allow me to rotate it. Now, you'll notice that I won't be able to rotate it in this direction because it is interfering with the base plate. So if you ever have that, the game is not broken, I promise. What you'll want to do is actually move it upwards, and then that'll allow me to rotate this because it won't be interfering with the base plate underneath. Over here, I'm going to click on the Materials tab. I say I want to turn this into just some sort of a window pane. I'll choose glass. I'll click on the color. Being a window, I'll probably want to do some sort of blue hue. So you can see right now that you still can't really see through it. It's actually kind of a solid. So in order to be able to see through it, we'll want to go down here in the bottom right-hand corner in the Appearances tab. You'll see one that says Transparency. Right now it's set to 0. If I click on that, a little slider will appear, or I can edit the value. But if I slide the Transparency tab, it's going to become more transparent. And see, now you can see that I can see through it. If I go all the way back to 0, you can't see through it. If I scroll to the right slowly, it becomes more of a window, more of like a glass-like object. So that's how you can kind of pretty much create any object out of just some of the basic tools within this game. So the first idea in this game mode is going to be to create a simple house using the tools in this game. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and I'm going to delete it. In order to do that, you can either hit the delete button on your keyboard or click the cut button up here in the top left-hand corner. And for my house, I'm going to start with a base plate. So I'm going to click on a block. It'll actually default to the last settings that you had for material, so I'll probably want to click on it. I'll change my material for the floor to be concrete, and then I'm going to change the color back to some form of gray. I'm then going to use a scale tool to make it larger. And again, your house can be anything that you want. This is just for the sake of the tutorial, so if you want to use different materials, make it a different size, you're welcome to do that. Now that I have my base plate, I want to create some walls. So I'm going to click a new part. I'm going to place it down over here. I'm going to make the walls with a different material. So maybe I'll make the walls out of brick. So I have brick, and then probably want to do more of a red color for the brick, just like so. I'm then going to click, oops, didn't mean to do that. I'm going to click back on the part, use the scale button to make these walls, and you might have to kind of fly around to see where they meet. So that's going to be one of my walls there. Make it a little bit taller. I'll create a new wall by selecting part, clicking on it. This time I'll need to use the rotate button. Grab the green balloon, rotate it around. I'll then use the move button to slide it over in place. And then I'll use the scale button to go ahead and create the wall out of it. Okay, now that I have that one, I'm going to go ahead and create one more over here, doing the same thing that I just did. Drag that up to there, drag this over, then drag this up. Now for the front, I want to leave room for a door and a window. So to do that, I'm going to create a part as usual. I'll go ahead and rotate it around. And I'll just make sure that for now I leave a little bit of room, and then I'll go over how to fill that in. Go to the scale button, fill this out. I'm actually going to shrink it just a little bit so that way I can add a window over there. Go up to the top here. Create another part that'll go over here. Rotate that again. Scale tool. Get a little bit larger. So for the window, pretty much what I'll want to do is just go ahead and create a different material between it, a different block that'll go between it. So I have this bottom piece. I'll create a new part now that I'm going to place on top of it. So this will be my window after I change the material. And then I'm going to add one more part on top of it, and this is going to be the rest of my wall. So for now, it's all going to look like it's one big brick piece, but we're going to change that here in a second. So I'm going to go back to my select button, select my window piece in here, and just like we did earlier in the tutorial, I'm going to change the the material to glass. I'm going to change the color to a blue, and then down in the Appearances tab, I'm going to change the transparency up to 0.75. So now I'm able to see through that. Now for the door, what I'm going to do is create a new part. Go ahead and rotate it. Place it up here. Going to then scale it. It'll let me grab one of those pieces. There we go. Make it about the height of a door. So probably something around there. And then I'm going to go ahead and create another part to place on top of it. This is going to be the rest of my wall. So for the time being, it'll be a different color, and then we'll change that in a second. Okay, so this top piece, I'm going to go ahead and use the select tool to highlight. I'm going to change the material back down to be brick to match the rest of it. Change the color over to the same color that I was using for the brick, and then the transparency is back down to 0 where it should be. For the door, I'm going to select it. I'm going to change the material to probably a wood. I'll change the color to something that would look more like wood, something like that maybe. And then this is a very important step. So right now that's a solid object and your character won't be able to walk through it. So for your character to be able to walk through this, you'll have to go down in the Appearances tab. You'll want to scroll down and you want to make sure that Can Collide is not checked. What this is going to do is allow your character to be able to walk through it. So Can Collide should not be checked. Once you've done that, we can go ahead and create the roof. So for this, I'm going to make the roof out of 2 wedges. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and rotate this. Place it like so. Use the scale tool. Might do a little bit of an overhang on it to make it look a little more realistic. Drag it all the way out. All the way over. And then I'll want to drag it up. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. Get a new wedge. Use the scale buttons to go ahead and drag it all the way over. All the way out. And then I'm going to want to drag the top piece. And for my sake, I'm just going to do this a little bit taller so it looks a little bit more like a modern home. So here's what I have so far. Now, when I use the play button, I'll go back to the home tab and I'll use the play button to test it out. You might notice something when I hit play. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. It'll throw me in the game. And for right now, the house is okay. But in this game, there's actually gravity. So what that will do is if you just set an object upright, it's just going to fall over as soon as you start it. So pretty much what we have to do is anchor all of the different pieces that we put in this game that we don't want to fall over or have gravity have an effect on them. To do that, we can either select the individual piece and we can click Anchor up here, or if we scroll down in the Appearance tab, it'll say Anchored. It is not checked right now, which means if something were to run into this, the house would actually fall over, which we don't want to happen. So the quickest way to make sure that all of these points get anchored on here is to click up somewhere on the screen outside of the house, click, and we're going to drag down. It'll highlight all of the pieces that are in the house. And then we're going to go up here and click on the Anchor button that's right next to the Color button. Once you click that, all of these pieces on the house are going to be anchored, and if you collide with them, they won't just fall over. They'll stay in place like a house should. So, for this tutorial, that's going to be the end of it. Go ahead and play around with some of the different objects in this game. Maybe see if you can recreate something that looks like your home that you live in, or maybe your school or a different building. And we'll see you in the next tutorial.